Vice President Joe Biden saying there is no silver bullet to deal with gun violence in the U.S. The White House thinking about a broad set of new policies in the wake of last month's deadly school massacre in Connecticut. Here's the vice president.
There is no silver bullet. There's no, as one of my friends said, no seatbelt that you can put on to assure that you will not be in this circumstance again.
I don't know if he intended to use the phrase silver bullet or not, but what will be the political endgame? That's the question. Let's bring in our political panel. Deneen Borelli is a Fox News contributor, director of outreach for FreedomWorks, author of the book Black Lash, and John Hlinko is founder of Left Action and president of Hlinko Consulting. Good to see you both. All right, look, there's a flurry of activity not only at Capitol Hill, but the White House and the media, many of them liberal, are, calling, demanding for change. They seem obsessed with this subject. And given Newtown, I suppose it's understandable to some extent. But notwithstanding, Deneen, you don't think that any new laws are going to be passed. How do you figure?
I don't. And first of all, I think this is a classic example of the elites and the bureaucrats trying to force pressure on those who are legally able to own a gun versus those who are mentally unstable, who are able to gain guns and create this carnage. We're talking Arizona, Colorado, and the other places that this has taken place. I think the left is trying to push their anti-gun agenda, and the American people, those who want to own a gun, who have a right to own a gun, are outraged about this. In fact, their actions are driving up gun sales across the country.
Yeah. John, I must say that there is a common denominator, as Deneen points out, in the most recent acts of mass violence, gun violence, and that is the mentally ill. It appears to be less the guns themselves and the deranged people holding those guns. What do you think?
Well, I mean, the guns are certainly a part of it. Obviously, without the guns, you're not going to have the same level of lethality. I mean, we don't send our troops into combat with slingshots. We send them in with guns.
Yeah, but we're not going to get rid of all guns. So let's begin with the premise of there are going to be guns. Supreme Court has said Second Amendment exists. It's the right of people to hold guns. So the question is, what about the mentally ill? Are we focusing less on them?
Oh, well, I mean, it's got to be a broad-based approach. I mean, mental health care is a huge part of this. And most of America agrees on the steps we need to take. Background checks. I mean, 40% of guns, I believe it's 40% of guns sold are not subject to a background check. So if you want to find the mentally ill people, you want to keep the guns out of the hands of the truly dangerous. Well, if you don't check, how do you know who they are?
Yeah, it's interesting, Deneen, because there was a 10-year ban on assault weapons, which seems to be very topical right now. Both the CDC and the National Research Council spent years studying the impact, and you know what they found? They found none.
No impact.
And then the Department of Justice itself, as well as the National Institute of Justice, did a follow-up, and they didn't find any impact, and they said if you renew the ban, and I wrote this down, it will only have a small impact on gun violence. Listen,
the plunderers know who has a gun, what states have the laws where you are unable to have a gun, and states that you are able to. I'm a Westchester County resident. I was outed recently in the Journal News story. My home is on a map with my address where people know that I am a licensed firearm holder. And that I find is very outrageous and it's very dangerous.
Sure.
So again, this is the left trying to push their anti-gun agenda. People have a right to own a gun if they want to.
You know what? Will you defend my right to own a nuclear weapon? Will you agree that there's a certain level of lethality that is absurd?
To protect themselves, their property,
well, I want a
their
nuke.
family.
I want a drone. Why can't I have one?
That's your business. Listen, I'm
so
talking about.
You protect my right to have a nuclear weapon?
And in fact, if you
don't
release
the
right to bear arms,
let's be realistic
here. It's a serious question. There's a level of lethality.
You made a very good point, John. I want to put it to you. He said when you look at some of the most dangerous cities in America, those are the places that have the most restrictive gun laws.
Chicago.
And yet they seem to have done little to deter gun violence.
Well, I mean, you can have very restrictive gun laws in one city, but if the city 3 miles away, if it's open season, I mean, you compare like D.C. and Virginia, for example, it's not that hard to truck a whole bunch of guns across the border. And, you have to have something at the national level. And look, it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all solution. The reality is we need mental health care. But, when someone has 100 bullets in a clip, they're not hunting deer. It's pretty obvious
Listen,
what they're doing.
if people want to own a gun, no matter how many bullets are in a clip, that is their right. I am someone who was stalked by someone over a year. And let me tell you
No one
something,
is
I
saying you
would
don't
have
have the right
used
to have
the
a gun.
gun at any chance I had.
I don't blame
So
you.
I
What about
don't,
his
see, I don't
point
see
of
the fact that you're telling
high-capacity
someone
clips?
that they should use more
In
bullets
addition
or
to
less
assault
bullets.
weapons, as John points out, high-capacity clips are also a target of those who want stronger laws. What do you think about that?
Listen, I think it's up to the states.
Yeah.
Let the states decide what rules and laws that they want to have, but don't have this blanking sweep of laws and rules against people who want to own certain guns.
Executive order, good idea, bad idea, John?
I think, look, if Congress is not going to act and the American people want common sense reform, then yeah, executive order, go for it.
It's a horrible idea, and I think the Democrats who are coming up for election, they're not going to stand for that.
This president loves executive orders.
And he
so
has
we'll wait and see.
protection.
Sure, we'll wait and see.
Yeah.
Deneen, Borelli, John Hlinko, good to see you both.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right.